Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Quest for the Best Director podcast, also known as the Greatest Movie Director Bracket Ever podcast, also known as podcast where Derek gets to act like he's formulating opinions when he has already decided on which movie he likes better.
Yeah, isn't the point? Isn't that the point?
My name is Matthew Moore. And with me is the guy who's encountered quite a few androgynous forest spirits in his day, Caleb Ferguson. Caleb, how you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, Matthew. How are you doing?
I'm good. What is that spirit, a guy or a girl? I know it's 2018, so it doesn't really matter. But
I'm pretty sure it's a dude.
So I thought it was a guy.
No, it's a girl.
My roommate thought it was a girl, so it's 2-2 now.
Well, it's kind of like
someone's gotta break a side for us.
It's pretty much a girl, but it overall it kind of just doesn't matter because it can change genders whenever it wants.
Why?
That's very strange. I had to me, I was 100% guy. I didn't even think it was an androgynous. Wow. Strange.
Also with us is someone who was supposed to wait to talk until he was introduced. Derek Shorzynski. Derek, how you doing?
I don't follow any rules.
You're a wild child.
Can't hold me down.
You are a wild child. Okay. Well, speaking of which, this is the Quest for Best Director Ever podcast. Each week we pit two directors against each other based on one of their movies. This week, for this first round, we're doing their fifth best movie. This week it is Akira Kurosawa's and his movie Throne of Blood versus Francois Truffaut's The Wild Child. At the end of the podcast, we will vote on which movie we like better, and that director will move on. So without further ado, do you guys want to get into Throne of Blood first?
Sure.
Let Derek have his time to, believe himself. Derek, what'd you think of Throne of Blood?
I was a big fan, as you might imagine.
For those of you who don't know, Throne of Blood is basically a samurai version of Macbeth. It follows pretty close to the same storyline. The only difference is, obviously, the characters have different names. So, the Macbeth character's name is Oshizu. His wife is Asaji. And okay, I don't actually know Macbeth too well as the issue, but basically the person that ends up usurping him is, his best friend, is it Macduff? Is that? Am I making this up? You guys know Shakespeare better than me?
Well, Macduff is the lord or whatever. Well, he's not Macduff isn't the one who isn't the lord. He's the dude who kills Macbeth. So that's the King Duncan is.
King Duncan's the lord, yeah. But which one's Mickey?
Oh, Mickey's his Macbeth's friend. That's Fleance.
Okay, well, Mickey is apparently Fleance, his son. He's usurping the kingdom. And it's all great and dandy. Derek, I don't know Macbeth too well. I've read it once or twice, but it's been a minute. I don't think I've ever seen it. Actually, I might have seen it once.
The Orson Welles one?
No. I think I saw a high school production. Didn't they play it? I think Bob Buff did Macbeth once, actually.
Yeah, probably.
Derek, what'd you think of Throne of Blood? Was it an accurate adaptation of Macbeth?
I think so. I think it's very accurate, and I think the most accurate thing about it is how well it adapts to the Japanese culture, the elements. In Macbeth, it's Scottish witch. That's kind of the temptress and whatnot. But in this, it's kind of the witch is less, or the witch is now a spirit, and it's less mystical and stuff, and more kind of an oriental kind of superstition more than actual magic going on.
Yeah, Caleb, where do you stand on this whole thing? Are you familiar with Macbeth?
Not at all. I've never read it, seen it, or anything. Wow. But I did. I have read a few Shakespearean things, and in a similar vein, what I kind of liked is how seamlessly he sort of weaves in these Shakespearean motifs, these occasional asides that just have the common people and their kind of reflections on what's going on. It kind of space out our main action scenes. And I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly like I would see in Shakespeare, but it just works really naturally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like and how they're kind of used to make things obvious for us in case we didn't quite pick up on it too. Which is kind of
Hmm. Oh, also another example of that is how they kind of have in like Shakespeare. A lot of times they'll have like a play within the play, and the play that's within the play is basically the same thing that's happening in our main story. And the same thing happens with in this, where when they're kind of having their court and waiting for Miki to come, uh, they there's like kind of this old man that's like doing this weird dance that sort of is basically an allegory of what's going on in the story as a whole. And that was like a obviously a very like Shakespearean thing, and it also makes
Mhm.
sense within the context of this culture too. So
really
it's
nice.
kind of
Yeah,
cool.
because the dance was kind of like a no dance, not with less of the actual structure and the rules of no dance, but very similar.
What's a no dance?
Yeah, Derek.
It's like it's no is like a traditional Japanese dance with like uh old like it should be around this time it should have started. So this is probably like thematically correct that it's kind of bare bones because it wasn't until much later that it had like stricter rules and like traditions.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. It's probably like fairly historically accurate dance as well for the time.
Well, yeah, I think
That's
this is
cool.
one thing you can't criticize Kurosawa on is that he is like he knows the world of samurai pretty well. Right.
Interestingly, I think that like this is actually one of the least um I guess you could say like historically grounded or like accurate movies, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that to me like seemed a little bit more fantastical or like not historically like it didn't feel like exactly like I was living back in feudal Japan. It was like I was living in like a fantasy version of it. So it wasn't
I don't know if
compared to
that's
some of
like
this other stuff.
uncommon for Kurosawa though. Like
To me, there just seemed to be like a lot more fantastical elements.
yeah,
Like
Seven
maybe this
Samurai I
is
think is pretty. I've only seen a few of his movies, right? So Seven Samurai is pretty, realist for the most part. But then if you think about like Rashomon, right? You're literally talking to one character who's dead. Like that's one of the people monologuing is like the ghost of somebody. So like I think it's like
yeah,
pretty
but
common for Kurosawa.
not just in terms of like mystical stuff that's happening, but in terms of like the way that things are presented and the cuts and stuff too. Like it was obviously set up a lot more like a play, and so it didn't feel like you were getting like a window into real life feudal Japan or something. It definitely felt a lot more stage like, and especially like to me one of the most interesting things was like these cuts in the very beginning where it kind of has this like messenger running up to the gate, and then he like is like bowing down to the gate, and then immediately cuts, and his next sentence is like in a completely different scene where he's like in front of the court, and like that kind of stuff was very like it felt a lot more storybook like, I guess is the way I could put it. I don't know, there's maybe a better
Yeah,
word for it, but
it wasn't
I
as
think
cinematic, which that kind of is my main issue with this movie. Maybe my only issue with the movie is I enjoy the movie. It's fun to watch. I watched with my roommate. We both had a good time. But I am concerned that it's kind of like, okay, it's really cool that we got this adaptation of a Shakespeare play, but what did it do for me differently? Like, what did making it into a movie and making it about samurai really change? How that really changed my experience of Macbeth? You know
hmm.
what I mean?
yeah, I don't know. I probably can't say too much on that because I haven't seen the original, and this is like my first basically
Well,
like getting to see Macbeth, so I don't know.
yeah, I think this was that's probably like an interesting thing is that this is like kind of like a story inspired by at the same time as like a very true adaptation. So it's like it's not supposed to be like a new or like an original or like telling of Macbeth. It's supposed to be like an original telling of Kurosawa's image of like Macbeth in like feudal Japan. So it's kind of like removed from the ideas of being an adaptation almost.
But it is an
Okay, so
adaptation, though. I mean, it is. Like you said, it's pretty accurate to source material, and like I just don't. What am I gaining from it? Like this being a samurai version of Macbeth. You know what I mean? What's what? Like what's different experience. Like Caleb said, it feels almost more like a play than it does a movie in a lot of ways.
I guess I'm not understanding what you mean getting from a samurai version. It's not supposed to be like a samurai version. It's just supposed to be like original telling. I don't really see the comparison or the need to focus on this this being a specific telling of it
But
in
it's
like
not an original
genre.
telling, right?
It's
Because
not
it's an
original telling.
adaptation.
Yeah, you can't say it's definitely an adaptation.
Yeah, it's an adaptation, but my point is the point I already just made is that because of how Kurosawa is doing this, is that it's not supposed to be focusing on like that. This is Macbeth. This is focusing.
You gotta say, what is he doing then? That's what I'm asking. How is he doing this?
All right, then my point then would be because that wasn't like the point I was making. That's like a different point. So let's start. I guess again. What is your new point that you want to talk about?
I don't think there's no point I want to talk about. I'm just saying
how is he achieving this? So how is he achieving this?
You're claiming that, so let's establish what you're claiming real quick. You're saying that this doesn't feel like an adaptation at all, right?
No, that's not my point. My point is that yes, it is an adaptation to an extent, but the point is that Kurosawa isn't like trying to do an adaptation so much as an original telling inspired by it. So because of by the function of it being in a different culture, it acts more as an original telling is the point.
I guess, but then you have like this heavy intersectionality, right? With, for instance, like the out damn spot scene, which is so weak. Like, it really feels like they just like threw stuff like that in there for the sake of being like, remember, it's Macbeth. And I guess I should.
Wait, what scene?
Caleb, who like hasn't actually seen Macbeth. The scene where he like goes to his wife. Towards the I think it's actually the last scene with his wife, and he's just like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "I can't get the blood out of my hands."
Oh yeah.
That's like probably like, the most famous monologue in Macbeth, and is like, in my opinion, not significantly better within the play Macbeth. Like, this whole it's like the breakdown of Macbeth's character and kind of what cements her as like one of the greatest villainesses of all time. And here she feels like a gigantic throwaway to the point where I mean, what'd you think? This is actually an interesting question, Caleb. As kind of the objective observer here, what'd you think of that scene?
I didn't I kind of agree with you that I mean, even talking about it, I would have oh yeah, that scene. Like it didn't I mean, I don't think it was bad. Like when I was watching it, I didn't feel like it was weak, and it sort of made sense.
Yeah.
It didn't stand out, and also the one thing to me is that this I was correlating Macbeth because I can't really remember her original name, but she's not really presented as very much of a human character. Like in the kind of first scene where she's kind of first shows up and she's almost playing this almost temptress seeding insecurity and doubt in the main character. She definitely seems almost as much of a spirit as the spirit in the forest. She's she's speaking in a very monotone voice and she's not really showing any human qualities. The only time prior to this washing her hands scene where she actually shows a human relatable quality is where she kind of wigs out at seeing all the blood stains, but that was a pretty brief scene and didn't really have much context around it. So yeah, I'm kind of with Matt on this one. It definitely seems like it's doing that to follow along with Macbeth, but it doesn't strike me on any sort of really emotionally resonant level or anything.
Was it supposed to though? I don't.
Yeah, dude. Okay.
That's what movies are supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean.
No, not that specific moment though. I didn't really get that
then
moment.
What's the point of that moment then?
Yeah, exactly.
To show the breakdown of her character.
But
before then,
breakdown if it's not striking with you emotionally, right?
Yeah, and also
I don't know, but because
of a character prior to this, she's narratively important, but not really on any sort of other level.
Yeah, I didn't think she was supposed to be on another level other than narrative. I don't think she was given as much value, intentionally enough value to actually be the moment where she breaks down isn't supposed to be like significant for her in like that we empathize or that we're like, wow, that's powerful. It's supposed to be like, this is the moment when everything's falling down around our main protagonist, Washizu. Like, this is just like, this is a big moment for him in that, like, his collaborator is like falling apart.
I can see that a little bit.
I guess my thing is just like it doesn't. That build up to her falling apart doesn't feel natural because that moment isn't given enough. It isn't taken seriously enough. You know.
And also, like, that makes sense what you're saying, but like, you know, if this was like the perfect movie ever made, like it could have been more. Like there could have also been more layers to this. You know, that make it like a little bit richer.
I really feel like you're giving almost that. I think really someone was like, maybe it was Kurosawa himself. You know, someone said at some point, we need to have the outdam spots seen in this. This is by far the most famous part of Macbeth. Throw it in there. And he threw
No,
because it cuts
I
off
don't think
momentum a lot. Like
I don't know about that.
I think like that is by far like the weak. Like I think the ending of that movie is what was strongest to me. I think that is by far the weakest part of the ending, where it's literally like tensions rebuilding and stuff, and then it's just like you know, she's just it goes to his wife and she's like, I have blood on my hands and I can't get it out. And finally, he's taking her seriously. He's just like, okay, and he like walks away. It's not like good.
Well, because it's like, what else is he gonna do? He can't do anything at this point. He's like powerless.
Dude, if my wife is breaking down in front of me, like I'm gonna do something.
Well, he has like armies at the gate. He can't do anything. He's both powerless and has his hand full. It's kind of like if he tries to do something else, it's unrealistic because he can't just like.
I don't know. I just don't get why show it them. Like it cuts away from momentum so hard.
Because it's like I said, it's exact. All throughout the film, she's like very like. She's like the the fulcrum of like when like I guess his rock in that when he's like doing the bad stuff, she's there to come up with all the ideas and cover their tracks. So like the fact that she's unable to function anymore is like all like he's no longer able to commit to the things he needs to for in this scenario. Like he's no longer has that like rock that he had before.
Okay, sure, but then counterpoint, if you want to do that, then you don't have to do the like I need to get the blood out of my hands, right? Like if that's the only purpose of that scene, you're saying there's like no sort of intersectional like, you know, there's no kind of cheap sort of let's get our Macbeth reference in. Then why does she have to use like lines extremely similar to the actual monologue?
Because that monologue's very effective. Like, if he's like given the opportunity to use this very effective dialogue, why wouldn't he use it?
Because it, as we've established, doesn't really make sense. Like, because it just seems like that dialogue should be taken so much more seriously than the film actually takes it. So if you want to do like more of like my wife's going crazy, I think there's like a more efficient way that does not take nearly as long, and that is also just like more appropriate given how much how little we're actually supposed to care about it.
So I had a question about kind of before as we were talking about like the realism versus fantastical nature of this.
Sure. Yeah.
And a lot of like so the Great Lord, he has this like absolutely gigantic like crescent moon thing on his helmet. I wasn't sure like maybe that's realistic and maybe they actually had stuff like that, but it definitely seemed a little bit like over the top symbolic. Especially because like the whole crescent moon was like a major like motif in this.
No, there's definitely some like shenanigans happening.
Yeah, that was supposed to be like that was very intentional, I think, because if you notice, that was like something I was going to mention. But if you notice, it's all the like things on their hats, like Washizu and Miki's. It's in reference to like their faction or their flag. Like Washizu has the centipede antenna on his helmet, and Miki has the rabbit ears, which is on his flag as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and then the lords, like big, like as they, I should start with like as they get higher ranked, basically their symbol of their clan also gets bigger. So it's like as their clan gets bigger, their helmet decoration also gets bigger. So I think it's just supposed to symbolize like this is the big head guy.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I'm saying like I think in this moment, like the movie is like stepping slightly away from realism in order to be like a little bit more theatrical and symbolic, which is kind of like another way that I was getting to before with like some of the weird cuts and the way that it's set up more like a play is that it's like it's not to me like as like firmly grounded in realism as some of Kurosawa's other works and is definitely a lot more like theatrical.
Yeah, but I think it's cool. I don't know.
Yeah, it's cool.
I like it.
I'm curious as to whether that was like actually like a realistic size for a helmet ornament.
There definitely were some pretty big head decorations, so it's not like too out of ordinary, but probably not as big as that half moon is. Probably around the size that like Washizu and Miki have towards the end is like as big as it gets.
Mm-hmm. Also, that crescent moon has like a lot of Shakespearean significance as well. That comes up in Othello as well, I think.
Would you call it Othello?
No, Othello. Maybe I stumbled on my words.
Does it sound like Othello? Yeah.
Oh.
It's like the Mexican Othello. So that's a movie we need to make. But yeah. So I feel like okay, we need to go back to like my original question though, which is okay. So Derek's claiming maybe Kale can to answer this question because Derek seems to like disagree with my premise, but Kale, I think you do agree with my premise that this is a samurai adaptation of Macbeth.
Yes.
So, what do we gain from it either being a samurai adaptation of Macbeth or it from being a filmic adaptation of Macbeth? What do we gain? I guess you haven't read Macbeth. But do you see what I'm saying, Derek? What do we gain from either of those two aspects?
No, I definitely see what you're saying, even though I don't have the context. I think that like I don't know, maybe there's definitely a sense of convenience to having a film adaptation of a play because like you can't really like go and see a play like that easily.
Yeah,
and I think like
sure.
so doing any sort of like relatively like faithful high quality job of a theatrical adaptation is like pretty useful just as someone who like wants to watch the material. So we get something useful out of that. That said, I don't know like if it to me seemed like it added anything like particularly phenomenal outside of the source material. Like it seemed like it pretty much like stuck to the script in a lot of ways.
I'm just saying,
from what I know of Macbeth.
If we go back to episode 1 of the podcast, right? That's a long time ago at this point. We talked about Great Expectations. I think our main criticism of it was that it was a great adaptation, but it did not have much to provide outside of the fact that it was an adaptation and outside of the sort of intersectional. I don't understand. So that's my main criticism of this Throne of Blood as well, is that it is an adaptation. To be fair, with samurais, but I don't understand how either of that really enlightens my perspective of the film.
Yeah, like the changing the setting doesn't add like that much.
Or if anything
I don't know. It's just interesting. I think it's just supposed to be. I think maybe not supposed to be, but it just it's a enjoyable watch. It's like has good acting, interesting cultural references, and scenarios.
Sure,
and says a lot about the Japanese culture.
Right? I mean, we're giving it credit with beautiful set design, beautiful great acting, but there was not much outside of the fact that it was an adaptation. So like that's my thing. What is this providing? Like outside of the fact that it's an adaptation.
Other than that, I think just what like a movie does, like has interesting shots.
Okay, let's go over those. So yeah, take me through those. I did not find there to be too many.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, probably like one of my favorites were, well, there's a couple of my favorites, but I'll talk about the first one that like chronologically. when they in the forest, like running through the forest, like on their horses, like galloping at really fast pace. Kurosawa like intentionally does it like very handheld and like jumpy to like signify like the jumpiness of like the hills and the forest that they're running through, and like very fast cuts when they pass like branches and stuff. It's like cut, cut, cut. It's like really fast to show how like I don't know. It gives it a very high intensity. I really liked it because it was like very actiony scene without it being like an actual action scene. So it was pretty cool, and really effective. I really like that. And then after that, another scene is when they meet the spirit.
Wait,
like,
I'm sorry. Can I stop you?
All right.
Could you do something that? Sorry, this is gonna raise another question, then we'll definitely go on to. I think I know shot your red dog words, which is my favorite shot in the film. But without being an action scene, why are there no action scenes in this movie?
Oh, because it's I don't know. There's like some, but it's not the importance of the film, I think. Or it's like it's not important that they're like committing war. It's like what's important that is these people are involved in war. It's kind of like the action of it isn't the important.
He goes out of his way not to have any until I guess the very end with the arrows.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you think about, for instance, like the scene where he kills, the original commander, right? Original Lord of the Castle. Like, you think we would have been shown that, you know?
Oh yeah, that scene. I don't know. I think it would have been kind of reductive of the moment, because if you focus on like the action of it, it kind of like puts it in the person. If the action of it becomes like the focus, it reduces like what it does to the character, like to the action instead of like the actual emotions of it happening to these people. So it's like what's important is that Washizu has committed this act and how he feels of it, not that what happened during the act.
I guess, but I feel like once again, kind of looking at through the lens that Caleb was kind of talking about earlier, thinking about like how the movie would have been amazing. I think you could make what happened during the act inform kind of his later sort of corrupt, his later kind of spiral into insanity, right?
What do you mean?
I just feel like like if he had killed Commander kind of gave him a look, and gonna get kind of classic Commander close up, Washizu close up, into like
Mm-hmm.
Like that would have been like very informative. Like, okay, he is spiraling down. We don't get that. I'm just not sure why. Because it feels like
because it's not important. Because like you get the same thing of him spiraling down with the moment of him sitting in the room with the coward's blood and standing there shook.
Was he shook? Oh, okay, see, I don't know. Maybe we're shook. I thought he was like.
Well, he was. Well, that's why he closes up on his hands when he's holding the spear, bloodied, and his wife has to pry it out of his hands, finger by finger, because he's like unable. He's like paralyzed with how like distraught he is.
Sure. Okay, we don't want to talk to Caleb. Do you have any thoughts on any of the stuff that we've been saying?
Yeah, I think like kind of, sort of in that vein. I think this movie, in some respects, like lacks human elements, and I think that maybe some of this stuff might make more sense if I had more context about the play. But some of the stuff, like the main character Washizu, has some kind of like dimensionality to him, but every secondary character like has almost no like human qualities or is shown like anything really. So my main point for this is like the Lady Macbeth character, like I have no idea like why she's deciding to be like so insidious and ambitious with like basically seeding all this doubt and stuff in her husband. Like maybe that makes more sense in the play, and so like most watchers would like already know, but from like a standalone thing, I was like, why is this happening? Why is she being so crazy?
Oh, I think that's less of that's why I was going to mention this, but I think this is in response to like why this is a samurai adaptation, is because in like the world of samurai, like the idea of a man is one who goes after the best, like who, and they even said it's like a man is his ambition, that's like the idea of a samurai is like you faithfully serve your lord, yes, but you still have to have ambition. Otherwise, you are not a man, and you're a man before you are a samurai.
I don't know if that's like so evident though that it, like.
Well, they say it, so I think it's kind of evident.
It's also important to be loyal, so I don't think it's like so evident. It just makes sense that like a wife is
exactly.
like, expect her husband to betray his master. Like that seems a little bit of a bull decision.
Exactly. That's why it's also important that the spirit says things like humans are so afraid to look into the bottom of their hearts and stuff like that, because Washizu's wife and the spirit know that in the bottom of Washizu's heart is his ambition as a man before he is a loyal, samurai to his lord.
Yeah, like that's all well and good, but you're like doing that work for the movie. Like you're like putting in all that thought for the movie. Like this movie doesn't show any ambition before he gets corrupted by his wife, and he tries to stay loyal like through his wife's like corrupting a lot. Well, and basically like eventually gives in. So like if it was true that like he secretly had ambition all this time and his wife was just kind of like bringing it out in him like the spirit did, like we're not shown that at all. So like to do that
because he's afraid. That's why the spirit says that humans are so weird, afraid to look into the bottom of their hearts. That's why that's important, because he is afraid to stare into the bottom of his heart.
But we never see that because, like, as my point,
we don't have to see it. We know it. It's not that we have to see it; it's that we know it.
It's like you assume it.
No. The film tells us, like, or not the film, but the spirit tells us for us that he has this in the bottom of his heart. That's why that's an important moment.
I don't know. I think like that may be true, and like we are supposed to assume that to some degree, but like
no. It tells us straight out. Like that's a very important moment in both the play originally and in this movie.
To me, it would be stronger if he was shown having it like literally any sort of doubt beforehand, so that we know this is actually coming from him and not coming from other places. Because to me, you could also make the assertion that you could also read this as like the ambition and evil and corruption in the world corrupted this guy, and how like you can make it something about like evil begets evil or something like that. Because in no way is this shown to be something that originates from him.
Well, that's why.
Sure, but like we're not shown that at all.
Yeah, we don't have to be shown it like beforehand. That gives it away. That's like this is like the moment when he meets the spirit is like his beginning of his spiral downward. That's the moment. That's like Shakespearean. That's the beginning of the tragedy. This is like this first moment where he can like, in like the tragic sense, turn back.
But why don't they like show us instead of telling us? And telling us secondhand, no less.
Because showing us that he has ambition isn't the same as showing us because thematically it's not supposed to be like, oh, he has ambition. It's supposed to be like, oh, he has this ambition, but he can choose not to.
I guess the thing is like, it's okay to do this sort of secondhand telling, but when you do it over and over again, it does dehumanize your characters. That is just like a natural consequence of it.
Yeah.
What? And
also, like, it's not as simple as like he had the choice to not do that, because the way the movie portrayed it is that like his wife and the spirit were just gonna keep harassing him until he did, because he told his wife no several times and she wouldn't shut up.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, of course, because she
him at this meeting and stuff.
Well, he can still say no, of course. It's not. Yeah, he's not.
He does say no like a bunch of times, and then it's like,
yeah, and they can keep doing what they're doing.
The right answer, evidently.
No. It's not saying it's not the right answer. It's saying that he still has a choice. It's just that these people also have a choice to continue to incite him.
I don't know.
So it's like more human in a way, as both everyone who is, a baddie has a choice to both try to get other people to be baddies and has a choice not to do what they're doing.
But
except the problem is that these baddies aren't even presented as like humans who are also having their own free will. They're basically presented as like,
I don't know.
They aren't like full humans. They're basically just like parts of the setting.
Yeah,
I think that's a little harsh.
It's definitely like hard to say there isn't some sort of destiny element to it, right? When you have the spirit who is seems to be all knowing by the fact that he knows their names, he knows exactly what's gonna happen to them. Like they can't say no to. They can't say no to being Lord of the First, whatever, Lord of the North Garrison and all that.
Yeah, but the kind of like
does seem
interesting of that situation is that he seems all knowing, but the thing is he's only all knowing in that. This is where I think it's kind of like interesting is that ultimately still, Washizu can perceivably have like two routes. He can be like, I'm not going to kill my lord, and like maybe in the future he'll still become lord, and maybe the all-seeing spirit is still right, or maybe the spirit's only right if he commits the murder of his his lord regicide. So it's kind of interesting moment. I don't know. So maybe it is destiny, but maybe not. But we'll never know.
And there is also, to be fair, there is a hint that maybe it's not destiny when Miki is talking to his son.
Mm-hmm.
And Miki was like, we got this destiny, dude. You don't understand. He's like, I feel like it's not destiny. I think you guys are just doing all these actions to make this destiny happen and then calling it destiny.
Yeah, the spirit also says that, I think.
Does he?
Yeah.
At one point, something along those lines that, like, you've brought about you've brought it about by thinking that it's true or something along those lines. Like in like the kind of second scene when he goes back out into the forest.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's kind of like your own perception of reality is what, decides your destiny. Kind of cool.
Okay, so
ultimately, I think y'all are too harsh.
I don't even think we're being harsh. I still think I like the movie. I think Caleb probably thinks he likes the movie.
Yeah, I did. I liked it.
I don't think that. Well, I think you might be just being a bit too generous. I just think there's flaws in this movie that need to be pointed out.
Oh yeah, there's flaws.
Tell us one flaw with this movie. Give us one flaw.
I've already given you one. So like, spot scene I think is very weak.
No. I'm saying I'm asking Derek to give us one thing that he thinks is a flaw.
Okay. I've given enough.
Just so he has a balanced.
Well, one flaw I would say is that I agreed with y'all that a lot of the side characters that are shown aren't very interesting. But I think it's not too big a deal for me because that wasn't really the focus.
That's fair.
Well, what's just about Thornblade? Can I get the shot? I'm guessing the shot where the two are kind of looking at the spirit and they're in the archway.
Yes, I love it because the trees are there, the fog. It's kind of like mystical. I don't know. It was so cool. It was so effective. And then another shot I really, really, really like, and this might, I don't know, it might be, so far, both Ozu, Mizuguchi, and Kurosawa have done a similar shot. So it might be a Japanese thing. But when they cut to Washizu and his wife talking, they do a very central shot of the whole setting, including the doorway into and out of the room on both sides, on like the left and the way we're looking at. So like you can see the logic of the entirety of the room, and you can see Washizu's wife on the right sitting there, and then like Washizu sits down centrally, and it finally shifts so that we get an angle on Washizu's wife, like her face. So I thought that was really cool, and I don't know. I thought it was interesting also because we saw like Mizuguchi and Ozu do it as well, so might be a cultural thing.
Maybe I think it's weird to frame it as a cultural thing. Maybe just they get inspired by each other, right? Probably started as an Ozu thing.
Yeah, I mean, like from a cultural thing, I mean, like how like French people do similar things in a similar time period, and so on. Like
different time periods, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ozu
it's kind of like 50. I mean, like this is 50s to like.
Ozu was like starting the silent era, dude.
Yeah, but he made movies up until 50s doing similar technique.
Sure. I forgot all that stuff was like his older movies too. But yeah. What else are we gonna talk about the movie? Also, we're
But
doing
yeah.
well into it. So if we want to move into Wild Child, that's good too.
Yeah,
I think there's an oh yeah. Yo, we didn't talk about the music. It's so good. Oh my god.
Okay, Derek, get us with your quick 6
I
seconds.
love that was probably like one of my favorite things about the music is that it's so like everything that Ozu does directorially is like isn't meant to be like amazing but like super effective and like one of
do
the
you mean
things
Kurosawa?
oh yeah Kurosawa my bad
They're all
but
the same
anyway
name.
yeah all the same I was just talking about the other guy at the same time so might be but anyway the music was like so effective and like one of the moments like when I first thought about this was the moment when they're like receiving the swords of their new station and it's like very ominous music because they know and the audience knows that this is like a big moment so it's like very ominous it's like oh my god our destiny's coming true and stuff is like super spooky I don't know it was really cool I can't really do an impersonation of the music because it was pretty unique but
one other thing I thought was very cool that maybe one thing here's one thing that I don't think Macbeth does was this whole arrow thing, right? Both because Shizu is like he's like the one with the arrow, right?
mm-hmm.
And he's like I will, he's going to like fight. Well, presumably he's about to fight somebody. He's actually just heading to the spirit. Like I will do it with my bow and arrow. He's the bow and arrow. Miki's the spear, and then of course he dies to a bunch of bow and arrows. I thought that was a really cool touch, and that whole ending scene with him like dying of the arrows is like so effective, and like how he's basically getting pinned down. You can see him getting pinned down.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool too.
Yeah, that was a really cool death scene. Like really good and powerful. And then okay, my going back to shots I really liked. Also in that scene when when the Asashi, Washizu's wife and Washizu are talking, she like opens the doorway and steps out into the dark, and it's like the darkness like consumes her and she like disappears. I was like, oh my god, so cool.
Are you guys ready to move on to Wild Child? I feel like this will also, from the way Derek was framing things pre-podcast, I'm feeling this will also have quite a bit of discussion.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see.
Hey, look, what you think of the Wild Child? Well, first thing, actually, sorry, let me summarize real quick. Look, once again, it's a pretty easy movie to summarize. Wild Child is about this wild child who's kind of like a Tarzan, Mowgli kind of figure, kind of raised in the woods because he's actually found by society, and he's attempted to be raised by this doctor and like his maid. I don't know clear what she was. Maid, I guess, right?
Yeah, pretty much a maid.
This is Doctor is played by Francois Truffaut. I think he acts in a lot of his movies actually. But
yeah, it seems like it when I looked up. Seems to be in most of his movies.
And the child gets raised. They struggle at first to raise him. Things get better though, until the child eventually runs away.
But he comes back.
Runs away, yeah. But then he comes back at the end. It's like this nice happy moment. As he continues to learn.
So it seemed like he less ran away and went to see whatever this guy's name is in the movie, the main character, or John Itard. Yeah, it seemed like he went to go see him, but it was kind of like what's that dog movie where the dogs go to see the kid that goes on vacation or whatever?
I don't know.
Man, it's the really sad one. No.
Howard Yeller.
No, it's a recent one, like from the 90s.
A lot of sad dog movies out
there. Homeward Bound. That's it. I think it's Homeward. Yeah, it's Homeward Bound.
Oh yeah.
Marley and Me is more recent than Homeward Bound. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is fairly recent. It's in the last 20 years.
Call of the Wild.
Oh, also, yeah, that's kind of Call of the Wild S too. But yeah, it seemed like it was kind of like him running away to go see his owner. More like.
Yeah, I actually didn't pick up on that, but you might be right. But either way, he runs off and he goes back, finds goes back to his parents, and there's this tension throughout the movie that's kind of important to touch on really quick. because I haven't really like made too much of any kind of conflicts. The tension between the doctor trying to teach a child name who is Victor is what they end up naming him.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of tension between the doctor trying to teach him and Victor not really wanting to learn, but then the doctor's kind of like overworking him, so you can be sympathetic to both sides. Because the doctor is really trying to help him, but sometimes he overworks him a bit too much. Caleb, what do you think of the Wild Child?
I thought it was really good, and I thought that like what you just kind of described is like really important. How they sort of like have this like very like realistic situation where like you can always sympathize with both sides, and like this guy like is trying to help him, but yeah, he's flawed and like sometimes overworks him a little bit. So like I don't know, that's like kind of a very common thing throughout the movie. It's like it's sort of I saw one reviewer like describe it as understated, and I think that's like a really great way to describe it because it doesn't like throw anything super didactic in your face, and it doesn't like really take sides. It just sort of like presents this interesting, very human situation and sort of like just lets you watch it. It's really cool.
I think it's a really
like it doesn't try to editorialize it that much.
Derek, what are your thoughts?
My problem is I had a problem. Yeah, I'm gonna have to start with the problem because I don't know. I kind of disagree that they're sympathetic.
Wow.
In a way.
That's a hot take.
On both sides, at least, because it was like kind of cool. Like, yeah, this dude's like taking in this wild child or whatever, and I was like, that's kind of cool, but it's not very interesting.
Wait, how's that? Why does that make him not sympathetic?
In that, the reason why I found it like uninteresting is because it's kind of like this dude is. I don't know. It felt more like he was treating him as a test subject and less of a like actual, trying to help him. I don't know.
That's definitely true. Like that's part of the conflict of the movie a little bit is that like yeah, he definitely does treat him a little bit like a test subject, but on the other hand, he's also like treats him very kindly in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, and, that's what
like
where
it's kind of like him 3 square meals a day, so his life is obviously far better than it was in the wild. So it's like that's kind of what I mean is
I think like it's also important to not view it as like his life in the wild versus his life now, because the alternative isn't the wild, right? Because the alternative is the kid going to like basically an insane asylum.
Yeah.
Where they're going to like constantly mistreat him, which is touched upon by they're like constantly put him in the closet and stuff whenever he misbehaves. Yeah,
well, that's the dichotomy for the doctor, but the dichotomy for Victor himself is whether he wants to run away to the forest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sure. Which I don't know. It kind of like it starts out with unsympathetic characters too, so it's kind of like and we don't really know Victor, so I don't know. I just wasn't early on invested in Victor enough to actually power me through the first half where. Just like unsympathetic characters for me. So
okay.
Well, they drag him out of the forest with dogs.
No,
then
yeah,
they send him into
kind of unsympathetic.
insane asylum. I would say the maid is probably
the first half of the movie though. It's like the first 15 minutes.
Yeah,
I haven't gotten to past the 15 mark. That's like the people at the insane asylum at the 15 mark, and then we get to the house, and it's just like I don't know. It just scenes of Victor being trained to. I guess communicate in a civilized manner.
But see, that's not true. That's like not actually what happens. Like you can't. What happens? Those scenes is most of our like beginning portions of Victor aren't him getting trained. It's him like experiencing this new environment, right? It's him
like getting clean and getting a haircut and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's basically training him.
But it's not.
When you get a new dog who's a little, when you get a stray dog. You put him in the bath. You take him to the dog saloon,
and then the dog gets to roam out for a bit. You get to see the dog.
Exactly, they take him to yeah, exactly. They take him out to see the other dogs at the park. Get him a little socialized.
Training, though, Derek. That's treating your dog kindly.
I don't know.
It doesn't make it training.
If you're socializing your dog, you're training him.
Okay, but then. Literally everything's training then. We're all constantly being trained. And this
that's deep, dude. That's deep.
This conversation is pointless. So for the purposes of going with modern connotations here, he was not being trained much at first. He was experiencing life, modernized life, and enjoying it, presumably. Like milk a lot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and like he's definitely shown like enjoying himself a lot in his new environment. Like when they give him a bath and he's like just kind of splashing away and he has a big grin on his face. Like this is like 80% a feel good story, I think.
I agree.
And I think like that's kind of thing like with our modern like or maybe I don't know modern sensibilities, but like we kind of like want to say that like we want like we would expect this movie to be about like oh they're like taking him out of his natural environment and civilization is so cruel and dehumanizing. So that's kind of what you expect, but then it doesn't end up being that at all. It mostly just ends up being like a story of like them trying to help him. And maybe they're not always perfect, but who is? And they try hard to do their best. And that's all you can really expect of them. And I think that's actually like something that was fairly deliberate because I read a little bit on this that this was like sort of in the 60s, so there was like this whole like kind of naturalistic flower power kind of like idea of like the noble savage and stuff like that. And so this was in a way sort of like a reaction to that and saying that like no, like to be wild is not always to be better.
Because what you don't have in the wild is like humanity, right? You don't have the love of others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's also as a wild child, it's all Victor knows. So to him, it's not cruel reality, but his only reality. So it doesn't really matter to him.
Yeah, but I guarantee you that he enjoys living at home a lot better, where he gets like 3 meals a day and doesn't have to scavenge.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like before he's taken out of the situation and put in like modern society, to him it doesn't really matter.
I mean, it's similar to Mouchette, right? Where it's like it's kind of this unfeeling life.
Yeah.
The difference is with Mouchette, her first feeling kind of drives her to insanity because of how poorly she's mistreated. But it almost works great as like an alternative to Mouchette, right? Like it was Keel that was complaining, right, about how it doesn't provide any solution. Well, this is all solution, right? This is very little of us actually establishing the problem, right?
Yeah.
But it gives you like a lot of solution. Like if you watch those two movies in succession, you'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you would like be told. You would like feel that pretty happy. Yeah. No, yeah, like it's definitely a feel-good movie, and I liked it because like it was a feel-good movie without being like overly gushy. Like it feels like you kind of earn it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I do think there is something to what they're saying. I don't think it's a lack of sympathy, but I do think that there is the lack of dynamics early on. Maybe we don't really get this tension until about halfway through the movie.
Yeah,
I think that's maybe the bigger concern with the early part of the movie.
I don't know. Yeah, it's probably that. It just, I don't know, it was just boring. And then when it got boring, I kind of got uninvested, to be honest. So it's probably less. It was probably more of a pacing issue.
Sorry, I felt more entertained just because of like the fact that it was a true story. Like that, like definitely like kind of made me feel a lot more compelled to know that. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Is that like a fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't really think about that when I was watching it, but when I was done and I looked it up, I could see that. Yeah.
Wait, because they don't establish in the movie that's a true story, do they?
Yeah, not really. So I don't know. That's probably it.
They do establish in the movie that it's a true story. It says at the beginning.
Oh, it does? Yeah, I guess I didn't pay attention to that.
I remember. I remember reading I read the back of the movie beforehand, so I just wasn't sure if I got from reading the back of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a little card at the beginning that says like this is loosely based on a true story.
And it makes that intro part more compelling, where like they're hunting him and stuff, and like, yeah, I do think that helps a lot. Then, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, if I saw the beginning and it was like true story, and I knew that they like did that in real life, I'd have been like upset as fuck. Like,
really, that's exactly where you are, because like you start off like knowing that this is like this really like dehumanizing, and you like feel really bad for him, like you want him to go back, and so that's kind of like where you think the movie's going, and then it sort of like switches it up on you by basically having it be about like the humanizing effect of civilization and love and care and a compassionate household and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And how you don't have to be perfect to be a good parent, right?
Yeah,
Which I
for
think is a
real.
really great message where this doctor isn't perfect. The first thing, the two parents balance each other out well, right? To avoid maybe uncomfortably goes along gender lines, but that's okay. Um, but balance each other out well, and he is messing up, and almost is slightly cruel at some point, especially with the closet scene,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the second closet scene in particular. But it doesn't matter because his child's raised well. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
child's
And like
happy.
after and like that's the thing too is like you kind of are also like this movie like I think it kind of shows the way that like we've kind of been tainted by certain cliches by the way that we expect this movie to go. Like when you kind of expect him to be like this like abusive figure, like overtraining him all the time and like constantly like keeping food out of his reach. But like if he's like trying to get him to do something and he's like rewarding him with like food or water and he like doesn't get it after a couple tries, he like still gives it to him.
Yeah,
And I think like we're sort of like trained by a lot of movies to think like there has to be like a bad guy and there has to be like a major conflict, but there's not like conflict between characters that much. Like there's some obviously, but it's not like there's a bad guy. There's just like conflict between two people that are both good and bad.
it's a bunch of. Well, also, it's a bunch of internal conflict. It's more like internal conflict brought out by the other character, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You
Oh,
see
it's so
this
good in that way.
frustration with Victor, and I don't think he's frustrated um at the doctor in particular. It's just that he's frustrated himself for like not being able to do it. You know what I mean? He doesn't
Yeah.
think he can do it, but it isn't like he doesn't really. It's not like he's like yelling at his dad. He's kind of just like sobbing to himself.
There's a little bit of that though, like when he's like doing the sign language and he's like deliberately doing the wrong thing.
When?
It's like he's doing the sign language where he's like doing out the vowels with his fingers and like he keeps like putting the wrong one and then like giggles and then like he'll put out the wrong one and he like puts out all five fingers and waggles them around.
Oh, okay, yeah. See, I wasn't exactly sure what was up with that. But I think that's more of the dad exhausting him, right? That's what we're told.
Yeah, well, like, yeah, he's had enough of this and he's like messing around now because he's bored.
Yeah. But I'm saying in most of the scenes, right, where he's like,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. That's why I think it's like really cool in that way. Like we don't have like a good guy and a bad guy. We just have like human characters and they're very like natural interactions at like trying to be good people. And it feels so like satisfying to watch. I don't know, and very interesting because it's like a cool story. And it doesn't have to have like a major narrative arc really. It just kind of just tells this cool story.
and on to the why I think these expectations are built of the Doctor as this kind of cold, calculating figure, Caleb. you know, cold, calculating Caleb. Really got that alliteration going. But it's or like sorry, Doctor as like his abuser, potential abuser, is because they make his disposition so cool, right? Like his dialogue at the beginning is very like overly formal, right? Point you
Uh-huh.
think they're just gonna treat him like a test subject, right? Because like this guy doesn't even know how to love, and it's
Yeah.
cool because while you see Victor learn how to like adapt to society, you see Doctor also learn how to adapt to society, right? This person's probably been you know handed a lot of things in his life and hasn't really the need for human interaction. He has no wife. He's not old, but he's getting older, right? And he
Yeah.
finds how to like love and care for this kid. It's very real.
Yeah. And it's cool because it kind of has that message or that theme that you kind of can see implicitly, and it doesn't have to be like explicitly stated. You just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of enjoy it. Like I think I like a lot of like really cheesy cliche movies and be like, and that's how he learned to love, and like really like make a big deal out of it. But here they just like have it happen because that's how it happens in real life.
Can I ask you at the very ending, either of you guys, what do you guys think of this very? Because it ends with Victor comes back and then the doctor's like back to work. What do you think's up with
Yeah.
that? I didn't exactly know how to interpret it.
Well, so what I read is that this guy like never learned how to speak. So I think in a lot of ways we've kind of like reached the apex of like his major development. So like there's not really that much more for the movie to talk about. And so that's like kind of from an external stance. And I think like his big like character development as Victor has sort of been has reached its conclusion, right? Because the whole movie, where like we had this sort of like slight tension of like, does he really like his life here? Is he gonna go run away? Like, which is gonna win out? His love for his society or his yearning to return to nature, right? And like when he runs away and comes back, that's like the resolution of that tension. That we're like, okay, he's gonna choose his family. Um, so like in a lot of ways that's been resolved. However, I will say that I thought the ending was pretty abrupt.
I think that abruptness is intentional, right? You got to assume it is.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know if I liked it being that way abrupt. But I
Why
wonder, do you think
it
there's a
was that
better way they
abrupt?
could have handled it?
Why do you think it was that abrupt? I guess like as I'm trying to say, I'm trying to give assuming the benefit of the doubt. Why do you think it was? And we can discuss whether that was effective or not.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's tough to think of alternatives because there's not like narratively there's not that much else that happens. Um,
Well, there's definitely a lot of alternatives. You can literally just do like, Victor, it's so great to have you back, and they all just like go love him, and then he hugs him, and kind of like this like slow pan out or something, right?
or oh, you man, you know that scene that I loved when he's drinking the water and looking out to the forest? Like that could
Yeah,
have been your perfect ending scene.
and then like him like holding him, well, he does it right. The two like looking out together or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point because there definitely are like ways that he could have made it a more like conclusive ending. So okay, why doesn't he? I don't know. It's hard to like get in his head like that. But to me, I was left like with a feeling sort of unresolved.
Derek, give any ideas?
Mm, I have no idea. I think it just, uh, like Caleb said, this is as developed as the dude's gonna get. Might as well end at a high note.
So what did you feel when the movie like ended? Like what was your like immediate thought?
Oh, damn! Finally, good God!
Jeez Louise, Derek. This is why both of you
No,
guys.
it wasn't that harsh, to be honest. That was a joke. Come
so
on.
hard to take either of you guys seriously.
It was a joke. Come on. I was like,
I'm just saying
what else?
is like positive about this movie.
Because I honestly didn't really have that much positive stuff to say about it.
That's what I'm saying.
But I didn't really have anything negative to say about it. It was just like kind of meh for me. That's just it. I was like 50-50 on it.
Well, saying
so, but
work by a director this great is meh. I think is inherently negative.
Meh in the best way possible. Like meh in that it's not bad. It's all right. I wouldn't watch it again, but it wasn't a waste of time. It was interesting story.
I would watch
that kind of meh.
I'd watch both these movies again. Let's talk about which one I would watch.
But yeah, I don't know. It was at the end there. It was kind of like at that point, I was kind of just thinking that I didn't really. Wasn't sure. I was more interested in what it like kind of meant for Victor. At that point, I was just kind of like thinking, is this actually him coming back to this world, and is he happy with this, or is this just kind of like his best option? That's what I was only thinking about.
Well, I mean, if it's his best option, then wouldn't that make him? I think he's happy with that. I think we can assume he's happy.
Well, not.
Yeah, for sure.
Best option doesn't require actual happiness.
I guess it's true, but like, there's nothing to indicate that he's like particularly sad. I mean, he's like loving his, his parents at the end. I think there's something to the line "back to work," right? It kind of builds like the sense of this whole thing is just gonna keep going, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also, I don't know, it kind of frames him in a bit of a negative viewpoint, though, right? The doctor, because it's like kind of working Victor right again, but maybe that's kind of speaking more to our theme. I mean, that's what does speak more to our theme. Like, it's like family isn't perfect. You don't always have like these beautiful, looks into the sunset, but it's just more about you keep going, you keep doing your best, and you hope that your kid's happy.
Yeah, that seemed like a pretty reasonable assumption because I do think that like look into the sunset as your finisher might be like a little bit too saccharine compared to what we have for the rest of the movie. There aren't really that many like super emotional, strong strokes in this movie. Like I said, it's pretty understated. So
Especially by the parents.
yeah,
I hate calling
yeah,
parents,
that's
but
for
that's the
sure.
bad part. Yeah, they're like very much emotionally understated, but in a good way, right? Like in a very like. It's not that they don't have emotions, it's just that they are slow to develop them.
Yeah.
Um. So another thing that I found interesting about this movie is kind of this. Oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? Not theme. Motif. This motif of like the doorway or like the window. You know.
Uh-huh.
Oh, because the window is like the way out into the countryside, and the doorway as well into the unknown wild.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of it, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
constantly being framed. But even in scenes without Victor, I think there were like a heavy focus on the door and the window. I feel like
I
it
think
definitely is like the escape, but I feel like there might be more to it as well. I don't know. You guys have any ideas besides the escape into the countryside as Derek suggested?
To me, it's like not too much about escape because their life here with Victor is sort of like about balance. They have like their lessons and their 3 square meals and their comfy bed. But then when they go out into the wilderness, they don't make Victor walk around straight, in a top hat down the country lane. They pretty much just let him like, you know, monkey around in the bushes and stuff
In a top hat
like
though.
he used to. Yeah, yeah, right.
Well, sure
but
wearing a top hat. That's consistent.
yeah, so it's about balance. Like they're basically like Victor has it pretty good, right? Because he gets the best of both worlds. He gets like all this comfiness, and then every once in a while, he also gets to go and like relive his old bachelor days in the jungle, running around.
Mm. Well, that's a Miley Cyrus reference, by the way.
Oh, it was unintentional,
It's always
but
intentional with
it's.
Miley, but
But yeah, so I think like to me, it's about balance. Like you have this like comfy home life, and then you also have the wilds behind, and yeah, I don't know. It's about balance, I guess. And the kind of theme of this movie and what sort of like how this plays in is because like this is all very like informed by like the Enlightenment, which is like kind of the time period during which it was set, and all this stuff about like the noble spirit of man's rationality and that sort of thing. And a major part of Enlightenment thinking has to do with man's connection to nature. So it sort of makes sense that this like this life of like an academic and like learning and cultivating your senses is natural. Like that's the natural state of man, is to be enlightened and uplifted. And so they're very interwoven, I think.
interesting. See, I like that interpretation. Do we have anything else to say about the Wild Child?
I thought it was less about the balance and like the choice. Maybe by balance you meant choice, but it seemed like it was, I don't know, more about the choice of both Victor and what is the name, Doctor, whatever.
Into the doctor,
Uh,
yeah, it's
like for Victor, it's the choice out the doorway into the wild, and the Doctor, it's to the sane asylum for Victor.
I mean, they don't really have to make a choice. That's the point. Is like they get to have both for Victor at least. Like he gets to have the home life and the wilderness. He
As
gets to
long
have
as
both in his life, and that's
that's
why it's
what,
awesome.
as long as he's showing results. Like if he wasn't showing the results, he'd have ended up in the sane asylum, and because he what's the name, the Doctor wouldn't have been getting the money for the mate's pension.
I think though that it is for the doctors also about like Victor going to the same style or not, right? Because like I think the doctor's always going to choose not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The choice is more about like letting Victor in or not. Like letting the wild come into him, right?
Yeah.
Victor,
Well, if he can't pay the pension, he can't pay the pension.
yeah, I know. I'm saying so. But it's not a choice though, right? For the doctor, the choice isn't the insane asylum. It's about whether he wants to kind of. Victor's about whether he wants to let society in, and for the doctor's about whether he wants to let the wild in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let himself love Victor and let him, kind of have these very core human emotions, or if he's going to continue to treat Victor like a science project.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just more the choice of the doctor. Okay. We good to vote on our various awards?
Yes, I am.
Who wants to start us off with favorite quote?
Uh, I'll start off with a quote.
Go for it.
I already mentioned one of them. Human beings are so strange, terrified to look into the bottom of their souls or into their hearts because it was effectively achieved what's supposed to be like and like made the audience understand what's supposed to be happening in this moment, like pretty clearly and effectively. So I was a big fan of that. And then, as just like a cool quote, I thought ambition is false, fame and will fall, death will reign, man falls in vain. Like that line in the song that the spirit's singing, I thought that was really cool.
It was cool. I like that a lot.
Because it's like false fame, as in like Washizu's gonna have false, like a false lordship, and then will fall, and then death will reign over him, and then he falls in vain because it's in vain because he could have just given Washizu's son the airship like he was going to and not try to kill Mickey, and would have been great. Or could have given Mickey the airship, Mickey's son the airship, I mean.
Well, I'm gonna agree with you. My favorite quote was, "The human beings are so strange, terrified look to the bottom of their own hearts." Caleb, favorite quote?
Yeah, I would say like the entirety of that like song that he sings, the spirit, which I think contains that quote, is
We all
really
agree.
good. Yeah. Let's see. The other quote that I thought was just kind of funny, not particularly like deep or anything, but it was kind of funny, is the doctor sort of mentions in Wild Child the pleasure he experienced was of no use to us. It's sort of like
Yeah.
it's very his sort of like analytical way of going about things.
What was you guys' favorite scene?
I really liked the one where well, there was a couple. There was a lot from Wild Child, like a lot of really small scenes that I thought had subtle
that's
things
the
that I
thing,
liked.
right?
I like the one where he was in the tub because that's the first time that you see like that he's actually like happy and enjoying himself. Where he's kind of just like rocking around, splashing. They're like splashing water in his face, and he's just loving it. I don't know, like really good feel good scene that you feel like you kind of earned as a viewer after all the kind of tension. You're like, okay, well he's happy here. This is good. The other scene that I really liked was when he's like holding the apple behind his head in the mirror, and he's like clawing at it, and then eventually he realizes it's like he can go behind his head. Like that was a really cool way of like showing his intellectual like capacity and growth, and like a really interesting problem because it makes you think like, oh yeah, if you're like never seen a mirror before, you're just gonna keep clawing at the mirror version. You're not gonna get it.
I love the scene where he's correctly. It's kind of like a pair of scenes, but they're followed successfully. Where he kind of correctly asks for milk with like spelling out the letters and stuff,
Oh yeah.
and then it's like the next scene is like him getting scolded, and he's just like, nothing ever stops, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Derek, favorite scene?
Either the scene in Third and Blood where they're running through the forest, or where Washizu is getting like pinned down with the arrows and stuff. That was really cool.
That was my follow up.
But
the arrow scene in Tunnel Blood's really good too.
yeah, and I was thinking like I don't know. It was something about the scene where Asagi goes into the darkness, like Asagi, and it's like pure black. Just like her, you just see the last thing of her is her like pitch black hair getting consumed by the darkness. I was like, I don't know. Something about it was so aesthetic.
Word. Okay. Favorite or best performance for or go favorite character next. I mean, mine's definitely Victor. He's the best. Although shoutouts to the maid as well. She's pretty amazing.
Yeah, she's really nice. So that's a really good element of the Wild Child. She's really nice. I would have to pick the Spirit and Throne of Blood because it's really spooky.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So they're gonna go with Shizu. I mean, that's gonna be your best performance. Caleb, favorite character?
I like the Doctor from Wild Child because he seems like a very realistic and human character. The way he has this like well-developed conflict inside him between like he has these he wants to like help the child because he wants to save him from the insane asylum or whatever. And B, he wants to help the child out of like his own sort of like selfish scientific curiosity. Um, but then on the other hand, like he wants to just be kind and like let him have a good time, and like the way he sort of like he doesn't want to push him too hard. He wants to be a good father, and so like this is like a pretty realistic um, portrayal of like how it is to be a parent. I would imagine this conflict between make preparing them for the world and also pushing them too hard.
I like it. Favorite best performance.
Oh,
I liked
Shizu.
There's more Shizu. Yeah, I mean that's pretty solid. I think
It's
also once again, I'll go with Victor. I think his performance is actually for a child is really, really, really strong.
oh yeah, yeah.
Caleb.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Victor's like so good. Like I
There's
can't even imagine like having like being able to summon up all the wildness and
yeah,
craziness to be able to
because he's
act
like
out some of that stuff.
he has to convince you, but he's both willing to like murder a dog who's
Uh
like
huh.
coming after him, but also and then he can do these tantrums on a whim, but then also that he's has sympathetic side and this loving side and the side that wants to make his surrogate parents feel proud. But then what I
Hmm.
think is like almost the coolest part is like he also really gets across the fact that like he can't really understand anybody, right?
Yeah.
And you can really feel that with the character as well. Okay, Derek, which movie was better?
I'm gonna have to go with Throne of Blood. I really enjoyed Throne of Blood, honestly.
You believe it,
Um,
Caleb?
Wow.
Blown away. Yeah, continue so further.
uh, yeah. I think y'all are being unfair.
I don't know.
There's a distinct
I don't think
possibility
either of us
out of
dislike
like
the movie. I just think
I would have been. There's a distinct possibility the Wild Child would have been. I would have enjoyed it, but I didn't.
that if the question for me is ever Derek is going to watch a movie by a Japanese director and a non-Japanese director, particularly Kurosawa, I can guess which movie he'll like better based off of
Yeah,
my
I think it's.
intuition.
I don't really.
Based off of my intuition.
I don't know. I don't care about whether it's a Japanese director or not. Just whatever, it's good. I enjoyed it more. That's all.
Mm, I think if we ran a
Yeah.
let's
I think it's. I
when we
think there's
finish
a
this whole
distinct
bracket,
possibility.
let's run a statistical
Which one of us
analysis on this.
says
Let's do a
Ghost in the
T-test.
Shell is one of the best movies ever? Okay, let's say that.
Caleb did say that. Caleb did say Ghost in the Shell is one of the best movies ever.
It's a good movie. But I think all I'm saying. Listen. All I'm saying is, after this podcast is done, let's do a statistical analysis, and we'll see how if a movie is Japanese, how much that influences Derek's
But there's
odds.
no way to actually tell
We'll compare
because
like
my
Citizen
my
Kane
premise is that
versus,
it just they're better the ones I vote for.
Well, it's regardless. It doesn't matter. That's regardless. All I'm saying is, if a movie is Japanese, what is that? How does that change Derek's likelihood of liking the movie?
You'd have to
You can't.
you'd
You
have
can't argue
to
with it, dude.
you'd have to create both a new movie that wasn't the Japanese director version, and then have me watch it after removing my memory of the Japanese one.
I think if
Uh-huh.
you do it, if you just make enough, let you watch enough movies, enough pairs of movies.
Yeah, exactly.
You can just do that. Okay. Anyways, I'll go next. I'll let Caleb be the decider vote here. I'm gonna go with The Wild Child. I thought it was really strong. It is because it's a really happy movie. I think the cinematography which you did talk about was probably like the weakest aspect. I don't think it was shot particularly interesting. But I think the acting is great and the pacing is really strong. And I don't know, I was just really hooked. Also, I'm a sucker for movies about like parents and kids. Okay, Caleb, it's all up to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Wild Child. I think we kind of had a conversation in one of the previous episodes about how like it can be sort of challenging to make happy movies,
Yes.
and I think this is like a great job of that because it doesn't come off as like overly done. It just comes off as like realistic and sweet, and it has people have flaws, and it feels like well earned. So I like it. Good movie. And the other one movie was really good too, but it just didn't stand out to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought it was like a movie that I would definitely like be down to watch with people. It's just there was nothing that like really changed my perspective of life after watching. You know what I mean? Or like nothing about like it wasn't too many takeaways I could really get from the movie besides like oh that was like a nice watch.
But what did you take away from The Wild Child?
I think you take away like this perspective of the child, right, and the parent, and how once again we talk about this, how the parent doesn't have to be perfect to raise their child correctly, and also just like a feeling of happiness. Felt happy after watching the movie. Didn't really feel anything after watching Throne of Blood.
I don't know. After Throne of Blood, I was just in a good mood because I watched a good movie.
Okay. I feel once again you can just watch Macbeth, but it's fine. We gotta move on. Which movie do you guys want to do next? We only have 4 periods. We can do Hitchcock versus Visconti. I was saying his name like that. Godard versus Lynch. Which I kind of feel like maybe we should save that one for last at this point. Scorsese versus Long or Buñuel versus Antonini.
Scorsese.
Scorsese versus Long. Scorsese's the king of comedy versus Fritz Lang's the tiger of Echnapper. Echnapper. If you do Fritz Lang, the tiger of, you'll figure it out. Until next time, I'm Matthew Moore. On behalf of Derek Schwarzinski and Caleb Ferguson, have a great night and or day or holidays. I don't know. We're when this will release, and watch more movies.